Hello, Americans. I have a little YouTube short with a clip from that has a clip from Congress. I want you to understand what you're seeing because the FBI and Congress have predicate acts individually and grouped, and the FBI with other police forms and police departments involved with wire crime acts and methods with them, mass fake transcripts. On a mass scale, they pretend things. They value definitions what people said about democracy and such, leaving out where and how nobody had free speech. Our founders did not have free speech. And then the presidents who were extorted, counter extorted by our founders to force them to begin the path to get the Constitution unabridged. But we don't even have explained the suburbs, how they were tactically denatured roles with slavery, designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and needs for reliance upon criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence systems. And I'm not a lawyer, but nature itself shows us that and how lawyers were our collusions with all sides of cases and the courts and the police forms. This is one of the things witch trials were about, even if they're made up. If they were made up, how were they about that? Because there's a witch trials place right next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Other communicated for it then and now. But you guys are dishonest with your emotions when you use passions or calmness. And you're forcing other people to entertain that while you are tactically delusions raw. With Adam Schiff, and it's nothing personal against Kash Patel. He could change if he follows mandated law. I'll show them how former standing chairperson on Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act was and is being and has been used remotely. He's a former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act involved with criminal enterprises, involved with criminal foreign influences, keeping other things, others, ourselves blamed for what really most furthers the overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and their roles with campuses as timed collusion /S, right, with the use of differences of guilt of the interbranch, the intelligence tied to them, their family members, different natures of conjunctions to them, or the other at the same time, even when they're not involved with the same cases, even when they're not involved with the schools. Increasingly, in other words, the intelligence families, they have roles, using all rights to lie and directions to lie, to hide where they're not supposed to hide. And our breaching, and our founders knew this would be true. And religious messengers knew this would be true. Because before religious messengers were born, and before America's founders were even born, already a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, if you will. I'm not a lawyer, thank God. In other words, lawyers and judges will help us. But we have to get the other ones caught first. They won't give up them legitimately. They'll hide and plot. They'll pretend like we're supposed to. They have wire and mail crime methods that force me to have to speak with you here. And they faked conversations with me being at the Weathersfield police station too. As a kid, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. Officers I never had a word of conversation with, including Mendez brothers. One of the Mendez brothers I never had a word of conversation with, a pretended other at Weathersfield police station. They're increasingly involved with Connecticut campuses roles with Saudi Arabia, with people, intelligence families near me that knew people I knew. And the dean of Central Connecticut State University and his kid, a Dean Judd, I did not respond to because already I had started to respond to what I caught them doing with people from my town. I didn't tell them about that. While they were being and are being used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, World Trade Center attack roles. But the FBI and the identities of the law don't have the identity of sophistication. Nature needed to counter that because they have been identities of sophistication as collusion /S. Like, for on off this Connecticut corrections offices and off the Connecticut judicial branch offices in conjunctions to that. And to that are manifest roles with use /S of them and of their family members in different natures of conjunctions to themselves to how it is conjunctive that way. Because the breaching method never stopped having collusion /S with all sides of crime scenes, and then further with all sides of criminal and civil cases. And the differences of guilt with them, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and they're also recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirming. Confessing where they're pretending other, because it's supposed to be keep it secret. But then they refuse writing, refuse communications with us, because they already faked the conversations with us since we were kids. They're doing this against anyone who tries to. In other words, Sense and Sensibilities is a phrase by Jane Austen. I didn't even get a chance to read her yet, because every year, but leading up to the World Trade Center and since it, are people increasingly involved with predicate acts with facts against me and methods that are recorded manifest relativity to the breaching method that is manifest at countries A through Z and at locations, areas, and states A through Z. And nature has been demonstrating that. But rather than appreciating nature's demonstrations properly, they have effectively been, by the breaching method, propagated to be self-cultivated. And they have been stayed self-cultivated roles with the breaching method. With nature's demonstrations, blamed on other things of negative value, nature progressions, acts, and dangers, and demonstration of the breaching method increasingly, and roles with it only fathomed. And all true is used for lies, to hide that, and to hide lies between that, and forced collusion /S with that. They're forcing individual leaders' voices to entertain definitions, opinions on America, on democracy's value, on the republic's value, as collusion /S, pretending not screening, but also sensing for the breaching method anyone not self-valued collusion /S. And I say self-value because that's right where we can discern where there is guilt, where you guys have where the three branches of government, intelligence tied to them, and the same thing at countries A through Z, and the people countering that with through time, where they have collusion /S as a shell game too, not even realizing the whole array of opinions, the only ones allowed to be heard. They share inherent active, progressive quality aspects in nature that are criminally foreign influence /hyper-criminally foreign influence, just as we could discern with where and with how and with why slavery was entrenched. Northern colonies and southern colonies, more than 13, and then America's founders were born. That means sick rules with sick things had been sustained. Hyper additionally to the breaching method that only allowed that fathomed. That's why, in other words, at least we have to understand the importance of it, how that of discerning how that was entrenched before America's founders were born, and knowing that and how the databases were criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, and the names of the people of the sciences, and the names of the people of the industries. If we pay attention, our founders left to declassify for ourselves how and why they did not have free speech, including any majority of people as a body, or they would be adopted, they would be sensed, and through their own. That's why and how they had all kinds of crazy sick. They had not just slavery against the black pupils, the communications of black pupils, whites of eyes. How we have the same eyes. I say we are guys just like distinctly from the other species' bodies, but also non-distinctly and simultaneously, but also per that, which is neither us nor them, but is all things anyway, and gives us with a method of checking. In other words, if it is all things anyway, and as according to its system and relativity with positive and negative, but its system describes criminal insidiousness natures of positive, distinctly from what our own members' systems ulterior from its own, unabridged constitution nature. For example, there are more World Trade Center attack predicate acts roles and cover-ups involved with the January 6th treatments and screening what actually was behind the individual murders of and hurt people tied to it, like with the World Trade Center, but also with the officers killed, even though there were less of them. The differences of the guilt of the interbranch police, their titles, or of people hurt by them, or the people hurting them too. That is also used through themselves. Otherwise, that's relative to where and how they are sensing themselves, even when there are majorities of people speaking properly about things, and how that's gotten adapted to. They can't fathom it because they're still pretending things are debatable that are not, and pretending things that are not debatable that simultaneously that are, because they're getting around the simultaneous / hyper-simultaneous nature. We are distinct from other species' bodies, but non-distinct from them, and simultaneous with them. But again, per a further distinct identity of simultaneous nature, which is neither us nor them, but it is an extent of us anyway. And it is further the system of us here, or our value is force from here, not as death, but as force space nature transfer, force to special difference transfer, lease of Hadith, but a special difference relativity to its system, that which has Earth especially different from the rest of the planets. And us communicated to with this, just like we have black people's white device in communications to us with revelations, that the sciences have theories that are simultaneously criminally foreign influenced and tactically delusions raw. So they switch names and sequences into branch. They already recorded themselves, separating children from families, and then pretend the breaching method showed them how they need to get away with that. The bordering countries and families from bordering states, they were shown and are shown needs to hide live aggressions. They have roles with Connecticut campuses, with families that have long been here, in ways even the intelligence communities, even the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, associated with them a number of ways, directly and indirectly, don't know about. And they've been hiding live aggressions tied to their roles with differences. And how they do this, it's even the difference of people know each other or not. It's a method that kept and keeps all natures of investigations of investigators and of their campuses and of the names of the people of the sciences and of the industries. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, and pretending other for the breaching method, screening it, while simultaneously as sense and sensibilities, using Jane Austen's phrase before I even read the book. I'm also being extorted, fact, human nature tortured, and fact, human nature enslaved. And I recorded this. You guys aren't paying attention to my YouTube live streams. You guys are pretending not to realize how they could and are recorded involved with mail and wire crime acts and methods, interbranch forging and switching names, refusing writing on a mass scale, pretending other, and sticking fake things in databases. Collusion / us also before that, and simultaneously, and with the difference of that, as the ones sticking fake things in databases, also with people from off campuses increasingly involved, and keeping actors acting off campuses tied to predicate acts with facts in the campuses they're building upon. So in other words, they're keeping whole careers with the Wethersfield Police Department and the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. And they're using wire and mail crime acts and methods. And they have their families and intimate ties and the difference of that, including there's a reported girlfriend of a former Wethersfield police chief. And then he was married. So it was like, I don't know if it was all directed to be secret, to pretend that's if they get caught. But they're leaking stuff with the same house, 80 Carriage Hill Drive, involved with police that are forging and switching names with child abusers, leaders of kids years apart. They forced that. And they're lying to the parents and making the kids have self-valued roles because of the relativity of foreign and domestic intelligence with psychiatry, for example. Also with the names of houses and businesses next to Hartford Hospital, for example. There have been roles with the campuses intercities and with names next to them involved with acting tied to fake conversations to pretend that's real, as the rules of identity, theft, fraud, slanders. One of the things this is against every single human, the breaching method is an identity theft, fraud, slander method. Nature communicates to us about identity being a distinct species body of individual bodies, and also where and how it comes with its body, generating all group differences, and further, its way, with positive or negative, that doesn't leave out the difference between criminal and insidiousness natures of positives. For example, too, all sides of criminal and civil cases, they've been using that to pretend outcomes mean what they don't, and they've been lying even with the news about the actual outcomes in cases. Increasingly, people tied to co-defendants, a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, various natures of federal criminals, since before they were proven that, and other natures of federal criminals have roles next to Fox Connecticut News and next to WFSB and next to WTNH a number of ways. And they're leaking this rather than respond to me and fix the fake conversations they have with me. And at the same time, with the interbranch that prevent writing to stick more fake things in conversations, faked and changed communications, and even telling things to their parents and with kids. And then with as an adult through their lifetime. Intercities, they have predicate acts with facts methods. They have complete possession over every identity of difference, every identity of title. Though they have to pretend that's debatable rather than pay attention to any one of the predicate acts with facts I noted, like wire crime acts and methods, falsified police reports, fake transcripts and databases on a mass scale, multiple police departments with the Wethersfield Police Department since I was a kid, involved with various natures of organized crimes, and recorded collusion/asset relative elderly homes already, and still, regardless of them, they're going to switch to owners. They're still, the place is designed only capable of causing negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and therefore keeping needs for people to keep all that's involved with it to be kept blamed on other things, others ourselves. Nothing is supposed to be done that way without blaming the breaching method. It keeps them with the interbranch family members with some of the worst facilitations of and use/uses of overt criminal enterprises and private ones. They need to keep the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures at suburbs that were designed before our founders were born, let alone New York City. They need to keep pretending to counter it as collusion/S and not realizing, and actually not realizing. Well, because their delusions are raw too. And that wouldn't be. I could heal your souls if you guys would follow mandated law. I'm not even a doctor. We could delineate their delusions from their criminal foreign influences worse than criminal incompetence, with black pupils, whites of eyes left out from subjects, and with our founders' communications replaced. All pace. So think again when they quote America's America's founders, because the only founder we know the name of is James Madison. And they came before our presidents who were all counter-extorted. That's why they had to leave slavery entrenched. And that's why they have to entertain campuses A through Z, blaming and having blamed what that breaching method caused and keeps on other things, others ourselves, because nature is increasingly demonstrating it. You guys are styles like pretending others have theory and then valuing how their digital crime methods at the same time. Whiting Forensics has rules, inter World Wide Web companies, faking and changing digital evidences with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, attorney generals. They're out of their mind. They don't know how to think. Get them to get me off fake conversations with WFSB. Have them stop leaking, or I'm gonna Wethersfield parents, Rock Hill parents, Harvard parents, schools, New Britain parents. There are bad people involved from off the campuses involved with a game they don't even know the extent of, but we could all discern it. All must learn it now. So, free speech. Get me off the fake conversations, please. Connecticut news locations have WTNH sources also involved with a bunch of people too. More child abusers, leaders, and kids. Like tied to I forgot her name, Michelle Sandquist, I think. is one of the ones involved further with a Lance Cuddy and people involved with the FBI and the state corrections offices, and on my street tied to her, and people with the former Mayor Gold's family putting fake things in databases and collusion with use/s of truth for lies. But these are also time collusions with people from off campuses, putting fake ties, fake natures of ties between people. Like, in other words, and there are other levels and natures of politicians, not just mayors, and involved too with the proven child abusers, leaders of kids, first force, and people involved with that. Then as adults, rolls with its self value too. Note self value because they're being and haven't been used remotely, right? Where it's not, well, I don't self value that. I know, but you do other ways. We're like, too. You guys are preventing mandated law, preventing me from speaking about the wire crime acts and methods where they just fake phone transcripts with the agencies. And that's why you're going to be leaking further and further with the FBI, with other agencies. Clearer than day, agencies, the difference, I don't even have to know the names of them. They have worse than criminal incompetence, or they would have had black pupils, whites of eyes, and hyper archaeological about the suburbs even demonstrated. We're all hungering and thirsting through systems now, tactical ulterior. And with nature design, these are grounds identity relation to itself. Nature's and the only increasing value of that being forced from here as forced space nature transfer as lethal hadiths, more probably. So we're going to have to take counter positions to the positions that the sciences have taken on the ancients. And we're going to have to break up time differently because we know that those were all criminally foreign influence databases. Where and how we don't know that about that. We have dishonest and tactical delusions, raw identities of experts. We have readings of statutes that give them the benefit of the doubt at the last second, no. Increasingly rolls with their motivations with wire and digital crime acts and methods. Readings of statutes and precedents, criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw, faking exceptions, having faked them while being and having been used remotely doing that. They can't afford to have their readings of statutes regarding the press. Why and why? How to? Even though there are reasons why it would not be good to use what someone says in a video or typed, especially. You know, there are exceptions to that because those things can be verified, but they're changing and faking things. All investigators are being and haven't been used remotely. Criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw. For example, Facebook has collusions with a Joshua Julian between internet companies involved with police forms that are also from off their locations, involved also with educators of a Celeste Wells are increasingly involved with intelligence families and people tied to them all along from the old Wethersfield locations, all along Route 175. All the way through Wethersfield, through Newington, and to New Britain, all sides of that campus are involved with ones increasingly involved with predicate acts, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and fake motives planting, because their countries and their sources have roles with a whole bunch of different countries that were here, but since before America's founders were born. There were roles with differences, rackets, and pretending others. So then they had to hide that in the future too. Because the breaching method nature shows that. Nature's increasingly showing us there's a breaching method and our roles with it. To discern the breaching method, we have to discern those roles simultaneously that the interbranch had. Even if witch trials were made up, we know that they were about their roles with slavery, northern colonies and southern colonies, and the difference of how and why used to screen how why actually. No one had a choice. Even though everyone was non-distinctly hurt by the same method, no one would allow anyone to speak about that, just like they won't now, not for the reasons they pretend. Amend all complaints. In other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Only 3 branches of government. They're clearer than day. Criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw, victim predators, hyper predators. But then they want to pretend that's debatable and then leave out the short words that came first. Self-valuing the intelligence agencies, changing it. And you're going to go deeper into leaking where we're We're going to have a map because they won't identify themselves or get on paper into branch. So we're going to have a map. And these are ones interstates involved with the World Trade Center attack. So make sure they get on paper so we can limit. I'm trying to give you guys the time. You guys are not responding. I want a response for what I caught the record, what was actually recorded. I caught the principal child abuser doing. They have rules with, in other words, that's why they've been repeating about pretending it's debatable and they don't know how to respond to it, about sexual predators with the campuses and the subject treatments. They have the news planting identity theft, fraud, slanders. They have all kinds of sexual and medical offenders with judges and prosecutors and doctors, foreign and domestic, with mental health. In those databases, they're putting fake transcripts in there. They're using those places to cover live progressions from the uses of their families at all ages and natures of campuses. And their collusion /S with the names next to them. Dear God, who disbelieves in the news at the same time.